spirit of matter. And now that you get the embarrassing truth of my screen, um, this episode is basically starting off with the midheaven 22 degrees in Virgo and the ascendant of Antares. So I'm going to call on the spiritual qualities, the aligned wing of Antares, okay? Being victorious in my, here is ascendant versus my career. Um, and being victorious in cover the topics I'm about to cover. So this is um, the last time Pluto was in Pisces, the passage of Neptune in Pisces, is Mercury hour on Moon Day, and the moon is about to go to its closure. Okay, um, so this is closure for themes that I want to say. I'm going to cover what made me press record, which is usually what I talk about, and a little bit of water expands upon cooling, kind of going back to my first episode, and how will I be moving forward. So first thing is what made me press record. As I was reading, going over Mr. Coyner book again, I was reading a passage about a person who um, had 2 coins. One was stolen, and Mr. Coyner goes next to this child and says, "What bothers you?" The child says, "Well, my coin was stolen. I cannot go to the movies." And Mr. Coyner said, "Well, did you cry? Did you ask for help? Did you this?" And the child, "Yes." Maybe you tried to ask for help louder. He says, "Yes, I tried." And then Mr. Coyner said, "Well, give me your other coin." And the child gives the other coin, and Mr. Coyner continues on. And that is the theme of helplessness that is perpetuated. Theme that's very relevant to Europe. Okay, we can talk about expendable children, satanic ritual abuse, and so on, but and very relevant for our times. And then I was thinking about a situation where several cases of such helplessness is met, and how this connects to Neptune, to an outer planet, where perhaps the role of the person is to understand that they are tackling something bigger than this one event. And this is where outer planets belong when we talk about cold cases, when we talk about missing people, hidden facets of reality, the deeper problems, and so on and so forth. And that connected to me to stuff I'm watching right now, I'm listening to right now, which is the Power Broker. So I'm listening to Breaking Down the Power Broker with interview with the author. And that was a recommendation that we get from Mark Rutte that I covered in the previous episode. And basically that book is about how to build great structures and build in the city of New York. We had a person that got elected, Moses, I don't remember the name, it's full name, Moses, and that person got to a position where he was not elected to, and he had unique information. He lived in Great Britain, and he learned about basically, it's very likely the civil engineering. It's not said. Yes, and he brought this knowledge to New York and began to build for what he wanted to build. It was impossible to fire him. It started when he was fired. He said, "I'm resigning," when he was very young, and somebody says, "Go ahead." Your boss says, "Go ahead." And then years later, it was impossible to fire him, and the only person who managed to do this was the person from Rockefeller family that had so much money, and when he was getting in the way, his power was getting in the way. They managed to fire him, but it was impossible because he got to a position was not elected. I got the recommendation for this book by listening to interviews of Mark Rutte, who has managed 20 years of coalition in Netherlands, then got the boot upstairs. He was offered 3 times to be head of NATO and said no. And he said, if you one more time you offer me this, I would say yes. And now he's head of NATO. And he's also a member of World Economic Forum, which is everybody would consider the grand devils. But like David Icke said, these are the visible, these are the presenters. And what we know is that person basically was inspired by the idea of being elected, not being elected to positions, so you could hold positions of power. What's interesting about Rutte is that he doesn't hold like grand vision, but allows for the vision to be so flexible and so accommodating that he managed to hold coalition for 20 years. And it's no problem for him to be agenda contributor, because if they don't like his ideas, of course he has other ideas, Groucho Marx. So as I'm listening to this book, okay, it's The Power Broker, I listened to basically how they evacuated whole population, and they did it not by the carrot, okay, so not by giving them money, it says move out. And I must say, frankly and squarely, we have a lot of projects that people want to renew houses, old houses, and these houses do not necessarily have special architecture, and it's very difficult. Even when my grandparents were alive, they tried to make such project. It's called Pinui Binui, okay, so evacuate and to build. And they try to lure people to sign it. You will get apartment so and so. And sometimes these deals are bad, but sometimes these deals are not so bad. Sometimes your real estate actually becomes better and more, more yielding. And so, still to get entire building, even small neighborhood, to sign one by one, bureaucratic, okay? And to sign one by one, we agreed to be evacuated and then to receive apartment in this new building is very, very challenging. You have to go through everyone must agree, and you cannot have the project running without this. So this is maintaining sovereignty. And Moses saw that people were not really looking forward to the promised land, okay? And then there were the methods that they would use to evacuate people. It's very, very relevant to 2030. Okay, we have insight of one person very openly saying what he was inspired, and he's in the World Economic Forum, agenda contributor. So we understand that it's not alone. The worldview of if they don't agree, we can finish them. Okay, and that can be done by pandemics, that can be done by war. For example, just today, my parent burst in and said, Hamas said that they believe entire Beersheba city was belonging to them. At some point, it was belonging to someone, many people. And so it was very synchronistic with what is being done. Okay, and the notion of building cities upon populations that are wiped out, and for the infrastructure, okay, to be the point, whether it's parks, because if you have park, you say, where's the exit from the park? And then just this information, this piece of information, where's the exit from the park that you plan to build in so-and-so city, you can sell this information. People pay bribery for this information for to build, let's say, gas station. This is an actual case that Robert Caro depicts in his book. To talk about bribery around New York City. So if you're a New York citizen, I never had the honor to visit New York, which I would like, of course. That might be very interesting for you to hear. And the channel is called Invisible 99 on YouTube. So what prompted me to talk about Pluto in Pisces all of a sudden. So I talked about Pluto in Pisces when I was in Ben Gurion Airport, and you want to listen to that episode. That was just me making predictions about the future. And immediately what I saw was the orange, Nederland, color of the shirts for the people that were protesting against what we call the Hitlerkult, which is at around 2006, 2005, 2006, 1.5 million Israeli citizens were evacuated from their homes in favor of supposedly territories for Gaza, expanding Gaza, or returning some land, which, yes, we all seen what happened with that. I don't think we had living prosperously Gazans that enjoyed that, but that move would definitely serves for the beginning of what would 2030 be. And as I looked at how I got to hear about this book is from with now the person who is alive that I got to hear, and it's basically stepping by this path. That is Mark Rutte. He has a Pluto in Virgo, and with Pluto evolutionary astrology, we look for where does this Pluto evolve. So let's say I have Pluto 0 degree Scorpio, right to his Mars. So it's very important for me, and I'm in my Pluto square. I evolve to 0 degree Taurus, which is the lunar mansion where what you just ask for something and you have this. Not in the sense of something bad, more like moving from survivalistic lack mindset to, hey, there is enough. If you work magically, okay? Not magically, there can be material concerns, but magically, there is enough. Ask and there is enough. Begin to ask for what you want. And so the Pluto of Virgo are basically transforming and evolving to the Pluto Pisces. Right now, okay, moving from what may be press record to with the next topic is the study live. What was the last time Pluto was in Pisces? So this is the chart of beginning for this episode. I'm going to hold this chart. I'm going to basically do a little print screen. You see the midheaven is on the degree of to kill and to be killed. And you understand that if the making of such big cities, even these cities can be very good to live in. I have to admit, and I told this story, I have Rahu in Gemini in the 4th with Chiron and other things, but I have to admit, I thought I was moving out of the city, and with all this 2030, move outside the city and so on and this and that. And essentially, where I live is the house of the makler, that was the house of the family of the makler, of the real estate agent of this village. But this village is actually territorially the biggest city in Israel. I did not know it. I thought I was doing the right thing moving out of the city. So what I must come about is realistic appraisal and say, okay, if I'm destined to live in a new city and perhaps even own a city, which is why people were so all in my grill for me to be a homeless person. And okay, and that's why it's so fated for me to learn about Ruta now, and Mark Caro, Robert Caro, and this Moses person. Is if it's fated for me, then at least I must make it with the best. And you see this knowledge I get from Netherlands, where I have small houses. I think houses should be bigger and land should be bigger and so on. And nervous system supportive housing, housing first and so on, with my own vision, but building my own vision. But what's important about my fatherland is that, my fatherland Nederland, Turks have also other fatherlands, which is by origin, the parents of the parents. And so what is special about Netherlands is that what you get something and you make the best of it. Okay, you manage with what you have, and my mindset always been, it didn't grow with my father, but my mindset always been that since filmmaking, as I work with what I have to get what I don't. It's fit for me. I'm not sure it's going to work for you. And it has yielded so far. Okay? So, midheaven here is a 22 degree Virgo and is a 10th house for this chart. And Mercury is in Leo sign, which is the sign ruled by the Sun, and Sun is in Virgo, 10 degrees Virgo. Sun actually squares the ascendant. Jupiter, ruler of the ascendant, is 19 degrees Gemini. And so the degree of to kill and be killed, and this probably is going to bring up the, yes, in this case, midheaven is applying to Neptune. This we're talking about the mass killing of people that was before creation of cities. Now, before I'll go to the study live, I do want to incept another topic. Some of you may have heard about the foundation of the United States and about the natural reserves. And the natural reserves, not the fiscal, but the natural reserves, that they basically conquered land, killed all the people in there, and decided they don't build anything. Now, from fiscal terms, you think it is to make houses expensive. Yes, you're not wrong. We think about cities, also there is branding of cities. Every city is a brand, if you pay attention, okay? And if you would listen to 99% of the way they talk about New York and New Yorkers, and it's literally saying, if a person tells me I did not live in New York any segment of my life, I think less of them. This is almost like a nation state. And there's some nation state that are cities within the state, not only Vatican. The Vatican maybe was the most famous one that we know, or not famous, so we don't think about Vatican in this way. But when there was the Julian Assange trial, so to be released from Belmarsh, basically we learned that Belmarsh is in a separate, distinct unit. And there's this distinct unit, there's London, and there's Great Britain, and this is, or England, and the kingdom itself cannot be allowed certain things in certain territories within London. So that's something you want to know. Another thing you want to know is the role of scarcity. Okay, so the importance of scarcity in creating legacy. We're not talking about money here. Money is a means to an end. And we're talking about legacy. We're talking about something that will stand the test of time. And so the preservation of nature, okay, is also preservation of, we do need oxygen, and we know to turn desert into forest. If you look at Sahara, we know to turn desert into forest. I'm doing this in my backyard. Experiment. I don't know if it will work. And it's basically, if you have dry land, you create half moons and you create a slope. There is always a little bit of rain, a little bit of humidity. It begins to, and even with the shade, it begins to form, and then you begin to have things growing there. So when you think in those levels, and understand, if you drop a bomb on city, you will have extinct species, forest growing, because 70 years, 80 years, you can't do much. You will have extinct species, forest growing, and you will have sexual polarity. So, whole view of how we make cities, not just for industrial evolution or for fiscal transactions or for power, but for genuinely being a part of the cosmos, and taking into account the fact that we are a little unit in this giant cosmos, is something that's been revised. Okay, with Saturn in Gemini, we are rethinking cities, how cities have been betraying our children, And what can we do to abolish for expandable children praxis is going to change for the structure of wealth and for the structure of our habitants. And you think about the city, the ancient form of a city is a house. When you build a structure inside the forest, and that structure you live in, that your family lives in, that's the first city. So, and like I said, if we take a look at Chinese, like I said in previous episode, take a look at Chinese cosmology, which is like saying, Africa is a continent in Sarajevo, but but we do understand the various streams that believe that the sky punishes the land when there is harsh weather in the winter, that this is man's perspective on nature, which is completely false. How do we manage between this and building cities or population that is on a micro level, sovereign level, good? And another thing for this Moses, he came from wealth, okay, and he was idealistic, but he was building in New York for people that had a driver. I've never been to New York, so I wish I had the money to travel and to tell you, hey, this is like this is like that. It's no replacement for that. But I don't have money, safety and wealth and so on. So I can tell the story from Frogner. If you are a New Yorker, then you can tell me more. But the way he structured the roads and everything was for people that had a driver. He did not have driving license, something I have in common with him. Okay, he did not have driving license. And so even from our perspective, when we are idealistic, we think about things and there is a range, there's an octave. When you think about the singer, okay, when I was young, I was listening to Mariah Carey, and she had this range of, I think, 7 octaves. Why this is important? Because the octaves of looking into the life of common person and being exposed to the life of common person, and the octave of being exposed to something that stands the test of time. In Europe, for example, cities you have for centuries. There's something about this, I don't know. Okay, because United States is not United States is new, but the tribes that were living there not new. And so many cities destroyed and this and that, not just by Americans. Okay. So there's a very wide range, almost like a vocal range, like a singer, that your thought and your perspective has to operate within in order to be a part of something like this. There's the big picture and small picture, and this is what the most giant difference between the particular, the cellular, the atomic level, practical physics, and the giant waves. Gravity is a wave, which we're going to see with Pluto Aquarius already. The entire cosmos, all that is the axis. We're going to have a lunar eclipse, and this is the axis of Pisces and Virgo. So for the people that have Rahu Ketus there, I work with Talisman that made, was architecture, the election architecture by the husband, and the Talisman itself created by the wife of people who created Temamundi version. That both have Rahu and Ketu, okay, both eclipse children, and both had the eclipse child also, and they had the Temamundi as eclipse product. So this is something, yes, called the company called Sphere and Sundry. They have a window until I'm supposed to give you code. I don't know. Yes, and then I get discount, but until I think 21 September. Yes, But I warn you, you must know astrological magic, so it won't be to the detriment. It's very intricate, it's very complicated, and you maybe want to start with something that's a bit more, because this is worldly. Okay, it's worldly. But if you already know and work with talismans and so on, then that is something that I'm working with. And the both of them have Rahu Ketu on axis Pisces Virgo. Okay, I hope they don't hate me too much for saying that. I said what I said. When I look at the chart, something comes out of me. I know I'm an astrologer. Okay, it's just that I don't care who I speak to, who is in front of me, who is this, who is that. It's just something happens. Now, let's go to our topic. Let's begin to look at when was Pluto in Pisces. And you say, Shirley, why Pluto? Why not Neptune? Why not both? Today Pluto, another day Neptune. But why Pluto? Because if I take a look at the charts of the 20-30 people and the rising star, Mark Rutte, okay, his Pluto is evolving to Pisces, to to the end of the middle phase of Pisces, 19 degrees Pisces. Okay, so I need to learn more about this, and we all need to understand Pluto in Pisces, because if the people that are the Pluto Virgos have created for 2030, have given agenda, have enforced also leaders in right-wing leaders, not all of them, okay, yes, we have Trump, yes, we have this, but the most, even Elon Musk, okay, he also has Pluto Virgo. The Pluto Virgos are evolving right now. We're going towards the 60s, in their 60s, evolving right now to the Pisces. They are evolving basically to their 80s, which is their Pluto opposition. Okay, so this is a big generation. I am in 40, which is Pluto square, covering for this topic. Okay, I'm a Pluto 0 degree Scorpio, so this is what my point of bias, but also awareness. Yes. So Pluto was in Pisces 1797 to 1823. Okay? Basically, after we have Pluto Aquarius, foundation of United States, independence war, French Revolution, we delve into a new era of Pluto. Patrick Watson. Oh, hello there. So Patrick also has a good course with Chris Brennan about rectification of charts. When I remember, I said there was astrologer that builds things with AI and the combination. So Patrick is this astrologer. Okay, very fascinating projects that he's working on. We are not in par on rectification of regulation of astrology, but he is more like go with the flow. I, as philosophy for philosophy, I say, well, it's going to be the beginning of the end for astrology. Because it's going to be stagnant, it's going to be annoying, it's going to be all the things that we don't like about psychiatry and psychology and medicine today. It's going to be astrology. But I also understand that this is a part of a chaotic pattern for the development of a scientific field, and I've had the honor to participate in this phase of the development of astrology, or this phase of the state of astrology in modern times, or postmodern times, or postmodern times, or these times. Anyway, yes, for Pluto. Okay. Yeah, we're talking Pluto. We are now in the century. I remember this meme. Okay, Pluto Taurus. I'm going to Pluto Pisces, and that's maybe an article you would be very interested in reading. Did great work on the outer planets. I remember the great discussion we had on Neptune through the signs. Me and my NDEs. So yeah. Pluto Pisces. And you know, I always pay attention to the surrounding when I begin a topic. There was right now a ring of a cell phone, not mine, but the ring was like the telephone. So I just note that as we speak. And we have a picture of the man standing in front of the mountain, the Romantic era. And remember, romantic is not okay, Me Too veteran. When we had the issue of the Me Too in academia, then they said this is romance in the campus. And I said this is romance like the romantic era, not like. But you know me as I am, I go into a topic and I say, well, let's look at it. Let's behave alike, instead of explaining what they did wrong. Let's behave like the romantic person and write an ode to the romantic era in academia. And I wrote a satire called The Sugar-Free Lemonade. And Lemonade album of Beyonce came out, and there was no money changing hands, so I just did it therapeutically. So this is Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog by David Caspar David Friedrich, a representative work of Romantic era. Also looks like movie poster. Okay. And what do I mean when I say Romantic era? For those of you who didn't grow up on history or grew up on history but not at the same era, so learning different things. This is the era where people, if you go to Europe, and I've had the honor to go, if you go to the north of Europe and you look at the sea, okay, if you look at the ocean, if you travel through the bridges that they build, you look at the ocean, and there are always signs telling you if wind is strong enough and the waves can go over the road, and it looks like a gray foaming monster that doesn't necessarily have your best interest in mind, nor does it necessarily see you as anything other than a part of the many things that are the sea. And that was never considered a place you would go on a date to. Let's say you wanted to impress somebody, and you say, oh, what would it be like to be with you, and so on. And then you think of a lot of scenarios and a lot of things, but the last thing you would think about is to take someone and to be going to watch this gray foaming monster that can take you at any time. But the Romantic era was the time where people began to see the view of the shore, the view of the foaming waves as something attractive, not necessarily only erotically, although Neptune is associated with Pisces is very erotic, but also as a source of interest. Okay, the depth of the psyche that we never explored, and this is a lot of Pluto Pisces indeed, the depth of the psyche that we don't bother to explore were being there in the Romantic era and were inspiration to Romantic era art, music. If you listen to Claude Debussy, and I love the Moonlight Sonata by Claude Debussy, which some of you know from Hollywood films. This is where the Romantic era music is not unlike classical music. I don't know if Thierry Baudet would approve of it, but it's not the classical music that you would hear from Europe, where everybody's dressed in a big, tuxedo, and everybody's sitting and watching a show, which can be to the certain, to the Arabic East would be unfathomable. But the Romantic era brought a lot more of this allinearity, and it's still relative, it's still Europe, but this allinearity in the music, and this richness of higher climbing up the octaves and going down. Here's these extremes that we see in the Romantic era that we didn't see in classical era, and so on and so forth. That's true to the art, and that has also affected engineering, not just philosophy. That's what we're looking at. So, talking about Pisces, ruled by Jupiter. Okay, so this is individuals with aspects from Pluto to more personal planets and points may stand out as their transformational gurus, artists, and dreamers from this time. Okay. People also take characteristics of the time they come from. Okay, the zeitgeist, the spirit of the time. So this was a transformation in resources of water with profound impact, powering travel by rails, infrastructure, and across the ocean through the first pressure steam engines, first pressure, first high pressure steam engines, steam again. When Pluto is about nuclear activity, which is about, so you basically invest energy, so you invest heat. You invest speed, you create heat, and you create a melting of the nuclei, okay? If you wonder when the technology that we used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki was created, and it's in Pisces. This is done in secret societies, and they pull it up from the water when the time is right, okay? So this is what astrology can do for you. If you're learning, if you're just learning philosophy of sciences in MIT, like I was recommended to do, and you do these nice equations, you don't get to think. And you don't understand what's going on in the world. You think, oh, the scientific revolution. No, it's the time where everybody, it's an air sign right now. Everybody takes everything out of the closet. All the skeletons out the closet. Now you know about these things. Okay. This time roughly corresponds with Napoleon's rise and fall as he pursued the dream of France becoming new Roman Empire, spreading liberal reforms wherever the Napoleonic Code was in effect. So again, if the humanitarian means all humanity, it doesn't mean in favor of humanity necessarily. It means thinking about all humanity at large, which is Aquarius. You have to remember that sidereal Aquarius is mostly tropical Pisces. And this juxtaposition can help us understand of why we see so much of the themes of something going viral, something going all across the board. And here we have one man, the dissonance of one man, the power of the solitary, Napoleon, going all around, spreading ideas, liberal ideas. Okay? Tropically, it's a mutable axis. So mutable is both the fire that spreads, if it's Sagittarius, but it is also where we make something viral. Right now we have Saturn in Pisces, which is number one significance is infrastructure of water, and I think you can still purchase Patrick Watson's Saturn in Pisces, only $15 it was. I don't know, maybe a little bit more right now. Great lecture, covers pretty much all we need to know about Saturn in Pisces. So infrastructure in water is very relevant. And this is preparing us for the next outer planet. Right now we have Neptune. For the next outer planet, that is Pluto in Pisces. So you see, if I make a jump to the middle of this episode where I discussed what made me press record, And if I take a look at, that was basically inspired by a leader, world leader, that is inspired by the time where they changed for the infrastructure of New York City. The power broker, okay, then inspired to look at the topic and definitely be transformed by what I see. Yes, and that Pluto is evolving to exactly that area. To see how the inspiration was very fit to usher Ruta into his evolution of the Pluto Pisces. Okay, he's evolving to do stuff that was done in Romantic era. We must remember, Pisces rules also for hidden crime. Pisces rules also for drugs prescribed and not prescribed, for pandemics. And what person is evolving to do surely meets them with new obstacles, okay, with new challenges. And with Pisces, it's very, very challenging because it's very difficult to judge the sea for being the sea, and it's very difficult to enforce anything on the spirit of the sea. It's the ocean. And to create infrastructure in the ocean is indeed the power of powers, which is why I say that nuclear energy was invented in Pluto Pisces era. Definitely know the stories that we've been told. I look at the astrology. Okay? This is a time where humanity would be channeling this in some way, shape, or form, very hidden form, and would be executed at the square, which is the engineering part, which is the Pluto Gemini. When you do experiment and you channel, I did channeling experiment, you channel one. Still need to look at for me that, but the natural inspirations that you would get. Okay, the natural inspirations that you would get, and the outer planets play a big role in those natural inspirations. So for the spirits that you channel, they come from a certain time. Okay, when I was about to advocate for my housing force and so on, and to learn more about this, I was channeled through a healer by being that was Finnish woman that assisted me to ushering me to the path of differentiating between the me and the other, even an inanimate object. Okay, because I had spirit that would not. So it's kind of like people do headless right, if you know from magic. In order to get to the type of consciousness that I would naturally be born with, but I had to go for the other route, which is to separate for the consciousness and say, you're not the toilet paper, you're not the this, you're not the that, because my consciousness was similar to what you have of the experience of the headless right. And it's by default like this. This is also why I didn't do the right with the Tema Mundi. It was not necessary. Okay? It's very, and I cannot say that I've truly evolved to that distinction. And so, but that Finnish would get me to learn about Finland, and then would get me to learn about where open dialogue was implemented and housing first was implemented. So it's American idea, Dutch idea was implemented in Finland. And you see how through channeling, and Neptune is about also psychiatry and so on. So even when we are channeling, let's say you are an engineer working and you have to put the Pluto Gemini and you need to work on the A-bond and so on and so forth, what the channeling that you receive would be relevant. So it would be from the other Pluto, careful, because you're evolving to Pluto Sag, and the Pluto Sag today, very fascinating. But you would also be receiving from the relevant Plutos. One of these relevant Plutos is indeed the Pluto Pisces, where we would have the melting of the liquidating the core of the atom. which is basically Pluto. Neptune liquidates. Pluto is atoms. So this is where I derive my argument from. It's not an argument that you can do with some equations in MIT. I could be wrong. I could be surprised. I can if you study it there, you can absolutely argue with me. But if you don't take channeling into account, if you don't take both spirit and matter into account, then you are deprived of huge segment of the tales of the times, and what to do with that. Okay. Embracing, so romantic era, embracing Piscean boundless. Okay, this I have to admit is not fully correct. But Watson, okay, is a person of many skills, so it's okay that one thing is not fully correct. And this the beginning was of romantic era, a reaction against the strict rationalism of enlightenment. This is absolutely not true. Enlightenment was both spirit and matter. Enlightenment was not antithetical to romantic era. Okay, romantic era, enlightenment to go hand in hand. Because to be rational, you have to know your biases, and to know for your biases, you have to understand the intelligence of the biases. Okay, if you get that, first of all, you get me, you get why I think how I think, and how the embodiment of these two eras. But it's less important to you that you get me, but that you get that to think, to touch the rationale, you must embody for the irrational and accept fully for the irrational, and from there is the rational within the irrational, and the patterns within what seems to be irrational. This is very Neptunian. Okay? I have Pluto in my 9th house and it sextiles Neptune in my 11th house. So we are living in the era of Pluto sextile Neptune. We cannot understand romantic era as antithetical or as a reaction to the Enlightenment. It is not. And that is, I think, is quite important to get that. If you don't get that, you will be falling into categories. You fall into compartmentalization, which is good if you think about it. It's like belly dancing. Okay, if it's try the unirrational, try the completely irrational, combine them, wonderful. But it's not actually what these two are. And you cannot understand enlightenment without understanding romantic era. You cannot understand romantic era without understanding that romantic era was basically a manifestation of applied enlightenment. Attempt to apply enlightenment, or achieve and apply enlightenment. That is the case. But we are presented with the tale of the times through academic, through media, through even cult culture, one by one, compartmentalized, because when it's comfortable to show you all of this, both is the rational argument that you need to be prepared and so on and so forth, and there is an act of control in that. Now you tell the tale of times like this. Now you tell the tale of times like this. Now you open up another page in the book. As a control over the pages in the book. Okay? So the attempt to control your akasha. Those who work with Akashic records. Okay? The ship. Attempt to control for the akasha, for what you need to know in order to proceed. So not everything is about the discontrol. There's genuinely preparedness, and there's genuinely, if you look at astrology, there's genuinely times when we look at that. Okay? Right now we are in front of a lunar eclipse in Pisces. Right before the Rahu Ketus of Pisces and Virgo are going to have Rahu return, Rahu reversal period. And it's not a long time. Rahu does not spend Virgo and Pisces. Um, and indeed, it is the depth of deep. You don't want to spend all of your life in romantic era. It's going to be very, very challenging. Okay, Pisces experience are psychedelic experiences. It's not just about the nuclear energy of the atom melting. It's your entire psyche going through that. It has radiation, and you're not the same. Okay, it's true to any Pluto passages, but Pisces is the range of octaves that Pisces take you, literally no other sign takes you. Which is why I said Neptune is very erotic, but not only. Okay. So Piscean boundlessness, free of expression, unbridled emotions, solitary meditative connection with nature, myth, mystery, and the supernatural. Was also when Beethoven began to lose his hearing, Virgo, Mercury, ears, and composed his most beautiful and celebrated music, the soundtrack of romantic eras. Okay, so we had, after Beethoven lost his hearing, he didn't lose his sensitivity to frequency. And so he didn't lose, not only did he not lose his ability to make music, he actually made better music than people who have their hearing. Says, please do not hurt your ears for the missions. Okay? But he basically enriched his octaves. This is something very important in the art of training musicians, but also decision makers. Attempting to get children, elected people of the blood type, to gain for psychedelic experiments as survivor of this, which now it can make a little bit of sense of what was happening to me in the past couple of years, is a form of initiation. And these attempts are basically to bring people to a state where they enlarge the range of the senses. It happens many cases naturally, some cases upon grieving, some cases upon war, what not. And unfortunately, when we talk about mankind attempt to work with nature and bring upon something, since Inuit tribes, they would put the people through, unfortunately, trauma and the torture, so that they would be like the shamans, the healers, and now they are decision makers, politicians, are hidden politicians, okay, not just the presenters, but the families of wealth and so on. So these are the horrid practices, and you can hear from Imagination Podcast, and you can hear from Trudy Verstegen on how horrid these practices actually were and are, so that people will reach enlightened and will have romantic range of senses. Okay, this is very relating to the Sedna story as well, because Sedna was not accommodated by the community, and then when she drowned into the sea, she developed deep psychic senses from these experiences. Yes, Pisces touches on that. Now, I don't want to diminish and say completely abolish the meaning of the spirituality that comes from crisis, or the spirituality following trauma. I don't want to kind of say like, hey, throw the baby with the cradle. That being said, when we want for, let's say, politicians, or let's say decision makers, of people that make decisions for the people that we can live with, to put them to such torture, okay, means that our entire building blocks of society is based on torture of children. From that, after you've accepted that, then world looks very different, and it's very difficult to bridge for what the worldview of people who've been through that to worldview of people who haven't. And this is where we get the problem, the essential challenge of why am I getting hermeneutics? Why hermeneutics? Right. Hermeneutics. Okay. The branch of knowledge that deals with interpretation, especially of the Bible, literary texts. Okay. Maybe that would come about. But this is, yes, the way the world is interpreted, of the way that the world is written, or the way that we see knowledge, varies dramatically. And it is so much so that even the common person cannot really live in the state where the leaders, the gurus, the decision makers are and have gone through this torture and for making these decisions, and supposedly for to be healthy, supposedly supposed to be initiated. And as persons who went through part of such initiations, I can very well tell you, if I would try to treat you in such method, you would put me very rightfully behind bars. And that pertains to what we call WHO with all the certificate. And what they ban, they still do for the jail experiment, for the electrocution, they still do to children today. So, and where did this begin? Not in Abrahamic religion and not in the Zionists. Unfortunately, very likely Zionists practiced that. But back in tribal society, all the way back to the Inuit. What we call our skinwalkers, our vulvas, which is not the vagina, but it's basically a shaman and healer. And we don't want to underestimate for the ability of these shamans and healers and skinwalkers to channel reality into the living people and allow for them to accommodate with the might of nature. It has not changed, not in the biggest city and not in the farthest village. And this is important for us to understand, because a city, before I was going to do the episodes that I did today, I was having experience a bit psychedelic. I don't take psychedelics, but I experience those things. Okay, it's part of initiation that happens voluntarily, and so part of the job. Okay, for what I'm doing here. And I was seeing it's just like when the old trees die, they've seen so much grief, even in nature, because animals, when they kill each other and so on. I'm not saying this happens all the time. There's a lot of joy and beauty and rejuvenation and so on, but they have seen many things, and then the old trees die. But also with cities, and with the cities, they grow like the trees, and they've seen so much grief. Also, they get rejuvenated, and this is for the Pluto in the mutable axis, is the changing of the seasons. Okay, September, we're now in September, so welcome in September, the autumn. Yesterday was very fantastic night. I was sleeping at my parents, and there was a small ventilator, okay, next to my bed, and I said, when I come to you, please give me the ventilator. If you can't afford it, I cannot come, because I need the good weather. So, Taurus, Sun and Venus, what can I say? However evolved, and I'm evolving towards Taurus. So I slept with the ventilator, and then midnight, if I got cold, I turned off the ventilator and I took on a blanket. And this to me marked for the first night of September. In Netherlands, okay, we have friends that live, Facebook friends that live in Netherlands, and they said, well, last week, they said it's the last week of summer. Prepare for autumn. And imagine going from this ventilator with which I cannot sleep to turning this one off midnight and taking a blanket. It's a winter blanket. It's not a light blanket. And that was welcome September. this is the time of the season. I hope that we can take something from that to this changing of the spirits of the sea that we see going on as the eclipses go to Pisces, as well as towards the 2030. Okay. It's also very manifesting sign. And let me see if I have Robert Moses. Robert Moses. So this Robert Moses, I'm not going to attempt at saying that in Dutch, but it would be very funny. 18 December 1888. I'm not going to even try. It's too funny. I cannot do this. So he's not Dutch, but 888, by the way, is building blocks. 8 year is building blocks of wealth, big wealth. So this is where a person, if I take a little bit of what I learned of numerology by Michael A. Bryan, he's genius in that. Don't know if he still teaches public, if he teaches public courses of that. If not, he should. So 8 is, is basically building big wealth, big structures, and you don't think so much about emotions. It's about power. Okay. So 888 is about big wealth. When I began to work with the Moldavite, I saw a lot of 888, okay, associated to big wealth. 18, I don't know, December 1888. Well, I don't know if I can have natal chart for that. Maybe I can. New Haven, Connecticut. We don't have, but 1888. Take a look at. Would already be Pluto Aries. Yes, 1888 would already be Pluto Aries, I believe. 1797, 1888 would already be Pluto Aries. So that would be the years preceding for this big industrial foundations, new big cities, and so on. What can we expect from? Okay, what can we expect with the Pluto Pisces? First of all, is going to hit us again in 20 years. About 20 years, I guess, about 1944. 2044, yeah. 2044. And we can definitely predict for another Napoleon case. We can definitely predict that there's going to be liberalization. Why? Because Pisces it can be very social, social welfare, social this, social that, but it is also about the dissonance, the bringing together, the juxtaposition of polarities. Okay. We can definitely predict that there's going to be some dissonance between the one person. I already began to feel that the one person that tries to bring decentralization of something. We have that with with Sun Aquarius, and we have for the one person who is spreading something that can be both a pandemic and a disease, but also ideas. So you think about if capitalism went, capitalists of the world unite, this is Napoleon. Okay? Or how to get into power, allow people's sovereignty. Yes? But this is more Libra notion. Libra, Pluto's evolved towards Aries, so they will tell you about sovereignty, while they will tell you that we should study it in school. So, okay. As for the Pisces, it's really going from, when we talk about power, it's really exploring extremes of power. This is definitely a time where we can expect religion and atheism to play a big role, especially we're going, yes, well, the basic style is beginning to open that, but definitely both we're going to go to extremes regarding religion, but unfortunately also for regarding children, which is another Jupiterian notice. Jupiter, unfortunately, his vice was Zeus, his vice was incest. It doesn't look very, nice. And there's a reason why the romance in campus was heavily criticized, and rightfully so. I can tell you, this person survived for this. It's not about what sexual harassment or what this, what that, that's horrible. It's about for the programming, for the psychic stuff, and for the many, many things that are impossible even to speak about, to describe in words, and that is, yes, and yet the disentanglement is also having to take into account for all these things, and the unpredictable structure of power. So definitely Pluto Pisces is going to be very fascinating, because if Pluto Aquarius require us to separate religion from the state and yet form countries like United States that says in God we trust and put it on the money, okay, it's true. Look at the dollar, in God we trust. Look at the, okay, if you look at the Declaration of Independence, we the people, in God we trust. In Sweden they had the website, I don't know how it looks right now, but the website, they said, in tax we trust. And in Sweden you had times where you had over 100% tax. That's sweet. That's just, they have most of the buildings in Amsterdam, so it makes sense. Okay, if you think Netherlands is corrupt, the Swedes own the real estate. So I definitely should be doing the Swiss chart, the Swedes chart, Swedes, same. Yeah. And so before we separate religion from the state, we're going to definitely have a deep entanglement of all structures of power, unfortunately from cradle to grave and beyond, entangled with both the theism and atheism. So there's a deep merging into before separation, and this is the cosmic quarter of creation. Okay, before we go into Pluto Aries and we drop bombs on cities and build new cities, that was the, I'm not going to even attempt that, 1888. 1888. No. So it just sounds so funny when you say it in Dutch. Um, anyway, uh, this is for, let's say, chapter one of what I learned about the Pluto Pisces. And indeed, if you take a look at 2030 at the WEF, now that we have a bit more intimate interaction with WEF other than Schwab, like I said, what comprise of the people that sit there, then definitely there is an entanglement with the philosophy. Unfortunately, also the vices of Zeus, before there is separation. Okay, and the idea of one world religion in Pisces is very dual. Okay, there's a heavy dissonance between the highly religious and the normalization of pedophilia that we see all across the board. Okay, we've seen that done in German parliament. And the inducing trauma in people to supposedly get them to develop into mythical people. And for the understanding that this is not something that we want to put people through is more challenging as people do try to live the myth. It is also going to be a great hour of the mythical arts. So whether it's movies, art, music, but also astrology. And it's not for nothing that I have been initiated, not by asking for initiation necessarily, okay? But during the years where I became astrologer, I did not connect the two, but this is initiation into this type of being, okay, where you receive energies and so on, but you also, okay, and I've been in Israel during 7th October, and in Netherlands before the Ukraine war. Definitely there's an initiatory phase to that. Definitely that there are things that I'm way more centered because I've been through this. Definitely I would not prescribe this type of initiation to you or anyone. And so we understand why the eclipses go through Virgo and Pisces before they venture into 2030. We're going to have Rahu. We're going to have all the planets with Rahu except for Lilith, Uranus, and so on, which stems for, let's say, trying to introduce one world religion, to build for that. It's also important to understand that when we see astrology, we see what the spirits of the times are opening. And when it's eclipses, we can't really control for these eclipses. And there have been attempts, okay, you can bring people together. You can bring people together. You can make rituals. You can make eclipse rituals. You can make all these things. I would not prescribe you to do that. But you can't. There's just so much that we can do. And then there is the world. There is fate. There is eclipses. There is, okay, one of the greatest things I learned about, working with Pima Mundi, its creatress was basically pregnant while doing that. While building this together, okay, because 5 years doing that, she was pregnant for 5 years, but she told her birthing story, and we're definitely learning that yes, you can bring all the components together, and magic definitely works, and then there is life. So as person that I've had people trying to control for my fate in various ways, shape, or forms, I can say that, you know, if sometimes a person tries to swap destinies, and I say, this is so weird that the devil tried to do that. And then I looked at the things for my destiny, and they say, why would you want to switch with me? And Mama, please, I'm recording. Don't curse online. So then we had another mishap. I have to look at the chart for when this occurred. As astrologers, we must feel our duty. I'm not going to translate you what was, because then she will say, that way, no, you said that. Well, ascendant on my midheaven, degree of heaven, moon in the 9th house in Virgo. Killer interruption. No, moon in the 10th house in Virgo, with a killer interruption of 22 Mercury into the 9th house, so internationally known mishap. And ascendant and the midheaven, just a couple of degrees away from the Ketu Lilith 7-degree conjunction, purging Satan, ruled by Venus 4 degrees Libra. Yes, that was, and this is a lunar, very moon hour, and indeed was my mother saying that. Anyway, if you don't know what it means, you're lucky and fortunate, and consider yourself so. So that was a little bit of Pluto Pisces and its relevance to the spirit of the time. It wasn't what I was expecting, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And now with this ascendant still so close to my midheaven, I will publish this episode.